Okay, Steve, here we are.
Hello.
So, the Cornermen podcast, I think this is episode 4.
Well, hang on.
I'm not including the pilot.
Is that not... So this is number 3 then, isn't it?
What was it, number 3? Yeah, sorry, I wasn't I was including the pilot.
Yeah, I mean, you can ask Marky to cut that out and come back in if you want.
No, I think we'll just have to keep rolling.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I was just being over-optimistic.
Yeah,
I'm planning ahead of my mind.
I should have just let that go. No one will care.
Yeah.
That's made me look
well, it should
really
stay
picky.
underneath episode 3, and I'll be on there saying episode 4.
I think you'll find, John.
Yeah.
It's episode number 3.
If we get a comment.
Yeah.
So what we decided to do
in
this episode is we're going to talk about 2 subjects again, like we did last time.
Okay.
And 2 things that we think, give, are instrumental in kind of keeping us together, especially in times of difficulty.
Yeah.
Things that are important to us as human beings. And what we've chosen today is music and meaning. Now, those are not 2, although they're going to be interchangeable, those subjects in a way.
Yes.
They're going to be a crossover. We're going to talk about music, and then we're going to talk about meaning.
Yes.
So it's not the meaning of music.
No. Okay.
So,
yes.
So, what do you want to start with?
Oh, I don't know, John, really. Like always, we're highly tuned and know what we're going to say.
Check your notes.
But I think, why I think we'll talk about music, and it was something you said to me, and it does tie in with the meaning as well, which is that when I was probably gently teasing you about the band. Do people know we've got a band?
Well, they should.
Have you ever
and if they don't, there is a band called Cornermen, and you can look them up.
Yeah, okay. But, gently teasing you about the band, and but you did say, you used to box, and going into the ring. Correct me if I got this kind of wrong. Going into the ring was something that pushed you, scared you a little bit, and it gave you, something to, a kind of, something to scare you that challenged you.
Yeah.
And doing the music is something you've not done, because until that time of Bunkfest, I'd never even seen that you'd picked up a guitar. Yeah. I didn't know. You know, and but then you said, well, actually, now I'm at an age really where the boxing, I can't do it as well as I'd want to. Now you could do it, but it wouldn't be the best, shall we say? You wanted to do something new that challenged you, scared you, and that kind of struck home. That's why the meaning and music was a good thing to talk about, because I love music. When we talk about music a lot, and we play a lot of music, and so that was just that. I think that's a good place to start, and then from there we can talk about what it is about music that we just love, and music can change our moods, and music's kind of a mystery.
Yes,
where does
definitely.
it come? Why do we like it, and where does it come from?
Well,
I don't think we're going to solve that. But...
No, I mean, I've looked into that, and I've really found satisfactory answers, but I could tell you about what I was...
Yeah, no, that'd be interesting.
And to come back to what you said, for my kind of journey in music, obviously I've always liked music and loved music, and, and then, and I did play a little bit of guitar when I was 17, and then, like you say, then I went through this arc in boxing, where I started off boxing as an amateur, and then I was, I didn't turn pro, but I kept boxing and kept competing and kept training.
Yeah.
And then I opened this place 20 years ago. So boxing has always been a very integral part of my life. It's always been a constant. And, even when I suppose, like anybody peaked physically, I mean, heavyweight boxers tend to peak a bit later, because it's like maybe your physicality is going off from your late 20s, but the knowledge that you've amassed is kind of picking up, and you're a bit cleverer. So you learn to make the best of what you've got. But then there is obviously an inevitable decline that you must see from the late 30s, 40s. You're really starting to tail off then, and you can't make up for it really with the extra knowledge. And then as you know, then I stopped sort of competing, and then I was sort of doing exhibitions, and then I was still sparring, then I wasn't sparring the pros and all this sort of thing. So I was gradually coming down, but I never stopped sparring until I was 50. And I was in good shape, and I was sparring okay, but, it just hurt a bit more. And, you're getting caught with things you wouldn't get caught with. And you have to stop. At some point you have to stop, because it's not good to get hit in the head constantly at a certain age. So I think I pushed it very far. Yeah. I stopped then. When I stopped at 50, and I just picked up the guitar again, just to play a couple of chords.
What inspired you to pick up the guitar?
It was something that I'd always had in the back of my mind that I would do in the future. Like I said, I played between maybe 17 and 18 for a year. And then, then I was traveling, and I moved to London. And it was like, I used to pick up the guitar at parties and play a couple of chords that I had, nothing much at all. And it was, I always thought I would do it. And something hit me, I think.
What's it, if you don't mind asking, because we talk about, music influencers, we have it, but artists influence us. And so was Damien Dempsey an influence in that music?
Damien Dempsey was a pivotal point. I'd already picked up the guitar
right,
at that point. Okay. I was messing around with the guitar, and I think I'd said to myself, if you don't do it now, you're going to be too late. So I think I did pick up the guitar. It just took me 40 years to pick it up again. And that was, and then I'd been playing for like a year, and I went to see Damien Dempsey, who I was quite into. I'd got a couple of records and all that sort of thing, nothing major. And I had one of those moments, which I know people talk about, and I know there's a guy called Ian Prowse, who I really like, a Liverpool singer-songwriter, and he said he went to see Paul Weller when he was 14 at the Liverpool Empire or something. So the Jam, this would have been, 1980 or something, or earlier than that. And went to see the Jam and was like, oh my God, blown away. That's what I want to do. I want to do that. Now that is incredible. And so he's, he was in a band called Pele, then Amsterdam, and now singer-songwriter. And, he's done okay. And he's made a living out of the business, and he's does some great stuff. So he had that moment. And other people talk about that moment. I know Dave Grohl's talked about that moment when he went to some club with his cousin and just saw this band on stage, was like, wow, I want to do that. And all of a sudden, I must admit, at the age of 50, I saw Damien Dempsey, and I was just amazed by the crowd, by the response of the crowd, by the emotional content of the music, by the political content of the music, by the delivery of the music, by the empathy in the music. I'd never knew that you could do that with music, what it did to people and what I was seeing happen around me. And that was a pivotal point for me, where it was that best expressed as that feeling of, I want to do that. Yeah. I mean, all right, 50 years old and I can hardly play the guitar.
No, but what I like about it is, you didn't, because you could have easily, and a lot of people maybe would have gone, oh, I can't, I want to do it, but I'm not doing that. People will laugh at me. I know. It's something I've always wished I'd done. Because a lot of people will say that. I wish I'd have done that. And it's the fear of what other people are going to think. Yeah. So I think it's a really good example what you've done, to sort of say, I'm 50, and I've wanted to do that all my life, so I'm going to do it.
Well, as you know, Steve, I really don't care what other
people... Well, I know, and there's pros and cons to that, John. But one of the pros of that is, actually, I want to do this, so I'm going to do it. And and we could all do with a little bit more of that kind of lack of fit. Oh, I'm not something I really want to do, but what will people think?
Yeah, and I think it coincided exactly with that time of giving up sparring. Yeah. Like you said, that was almost like a creative burst underneath the music. The reason being that I think that was part of my creativity in boxing. Boxing is really, it's made up of patterns. It's patterns of you recognizing the patterns in other people, putting down your own patterns and seeing how those two interact. And, so you've got that intellectual challenge whenever you spar. And like I said, the sparring has stopped. That was the key thing to me. Once you stop sparring, to me, you're not really boxed anymore. And so, it's like you don't have to do the same sort of level of training and all that sort of thing with that in mind. And it's recognizing and understanding those patterns and digesting those patterns. And once I stopped doing that, I found it transferred that in a way to the guitar, that creative understanding of patterns. Because you think about what is music?
Well, it's music, lost on me. Well, I like it to listen to it, but
Well, music is essentially patterns. Yeah. Music that's not in a recognizable pattern is noise. So, if you just hit musical instruments, and you don't know what you're doing, you will create noise, but you won't create music. So music is a recognizable pattern, and it's not just a pattern. It's patterns laid upon patterns. So, and patterns.
I'm feeling like Dougal
with other patterns.
I feel like Dougal in Father Ted now. Patterns upon patterns.
Patterns upon patterns. I mean, you think about a band structure when we have this. Normally, let's say a classic band structure would be, a guitar, a bass guitar, and drums. Okay, and someone singing. So that's a classic. You add and take away little things from that. So you're going to create a pattern with that guitar. Yeah, you're going to create a pattern which is going to be normally within a key of music. So you're going to play certain notes that correlate to that key that you're playing the song within. The person is going to sing over that, but they must sing in the same key, and they must follow the musical pattern, the melody. Then the drummer has to create his pattern to match in with all that. And the drummer's not playing in the key, but he's playing in the rhythm. And the bass player has to play in that rhythm, and he also has to play, all the notes in that key. So all those people are creating patterns, but the patterns have to sit harmoniously on top of each other. And that all has to gel in together. So it's, that again, I obviously see similarities because I've specialised in boxing, and now I'm kind of obsessed with music. Yeah. And I see those patterns, but it's the patterns that you create and what you can do within those patterns. If you if you go too far, if you make those patterns too easy and simple, it'll be boring.
Okay.
So somebody listening to it is going to give it, it's a tune, but it's very boring.
Yeah.
So it doesn't hold my interest. If you make it too complex, you might try and almost like stray out into the bounds of chaos, and it might all fall apart and sound like noise.
Yeah.
But you could introduce more complex patterns in there, so that it's just, so you're keeping the person's interest. If it gets too complex, again, the person will lose interest.
Okay.
Because they'll be like, well, I can't follow that.
Yeah.
If it's too easy to follow, it's boring. If it's too complex to follow, then it's boring because you lose interest. But if it's just the right amount and it's just kind of teetering on the edge, you look at a lot of things, when sometimes people play these guitar solos and it's almost like you think, oh my God, they're on the edge of that all falling apart.
Oh, okay.
But it's not falling apart. Another something to compare that to would be a surfer on the edge of a wave. You're riding a wave and everything looks brilliantly composed, but you're right on the edge of disaster.
Yeah.
And if you can hold it together, that's what the skill that we see and the skill that we appreciate. And I think that's evident within music as well. So I think it's patterns and it's pattern recognition that make music audible.
Okay.
And something that we can relate to. And obviously the amazing thing is that what you tend to do with music is you listen to it and then you start tapping your foot or something, so you get the beat. So it has a physical effect on you.
Yeah.
As well as that mental
and emotional
recognition.
effect as well.
Well, this is the amazing thing as well. This is where it crosses over into something. And we're going to go through all these explanations, by the way, that we've heard about boxing, or I'm going to go through.
Yeah, fair enough.
And you'll never get a better explanation than I heard years ago.
Yeah.
For a friend of mine, John Reynolds said,
yeah,
music is magical. And I think that encapsulates what it is really. I mean, you can try and pick it apart and explain it, but music is magical.
What it is.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly, that explains it.
It just, I wonder, it has such an emotional effect on us. I mean, some music can take you back to somewhere, either good or bad, can change your mood.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it has that effect on moods as well. And, it has that, we have sad music, we have happy music, we have, so it just pulls on those mood strings. But the other thing is the cultural impact that it has.
Yeah, okay.
And by that, I mean, you're 10 years younger than me.
Yeah.
So for you, that kind of coming of age music was Oasis.
Yeah.
And that brings you together. It brings that time together. And, I think we all have that. And I have that. And mine was more the Stone Roses. It was at that time when it's like, wow, this is our music. And this is better than any music that's been before, as far as I can make out.
Yeah.
The other music was okay. But this is really good. And then, and I think there's something to do with, the adolescent and the brain and the way you're changing. And all of a sudden you're going out into the world. And, you're maybe 16, 17, 18, going out into the world, everything, your relationships with people change, the relationships with friends become incredibly important.
Yeah.
And you have that sort of camaraderie and, that in a way you'll never have again, but in a way you'll always have.
Yeah.
Because of those people that were there at that time, because they understand it. And then the music comes into that as well and kind of imprints itself. And I think that's why I think we've all got this thing of maybe between 14, 15 and 18, where the music that we were into then is the most important music in our life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it kind of defines us culturally and it just brings something out in us that again we can't define because music is magical. But it's something tribal, it's something emotional. There's that level of important music.
No, that's a lovely description of it, and like you say, the ability to take us places and how we feel and bind us together and sense of identity, because you talk about, you had a look, the music came from how you looked, and I just wonder about music, how it affects us so much. What's the evolutionary,
I think evolutionary, it's a mystery. Because there's nothing you can point to as like other animals do that.
Yeah.
And I know there's bird song.
Yeah.
Funny enough, other animals dance. There are dances that other animals do. Which is
the birds are the fellas, the birds.
Yeah. Other animals do that as well. They're generally all associated with mating rituals.
Yeah. Okay.
But like I say, that's interesting that music makes us dance.
Yes.
So music, get the rhythm.
I'm not a dancer. Are you a dancer, John?
No, I have to be quite drunk.
Oh, we have had a dance. We have had a dance.
We've had an odd dance.
Yeah.
We were very drunk.
Yeah, we're just mainly swinging each other around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you get that rhythm and it so it's that sort of emotional thing. And I think also going back to in a way that tribal thing, the great thing about music is I think especially at that age is you're looking out for almost allies in the world. You're trying to say, look, who am I? Where do I belong?
Yeah.
What's important? What's not important? I don't really understand those things. And at the moment, it often as a teenager, you think, I think I'm alone. I don't think anybody else. Everything was quite normal a while ago, and now everything's going a bit haywire. But then that music comes in, and those songs come in, and it's like often it's singing about what you're feeling about,
Yeah.
and how you are, and so all of a sudden you're like, well, I'm not alone. And then you find a tribe as well, who also like that music, and then it becomes a very big, tribal thing.
I wonder how much because now, maybe going off a bit, but where music is kind of on Spotify and these platforms, it doesn't seem to be. I miss Top of the Pops. Remember watching Top of the Pops, and I don't know who the number one is, but I kind of wonder if this music, maybe we need some people sort of under the age of 25 to talk to about that, but I wonder if it's been affected really with like the modern streaming.
I think it seems to us,
it doesn't
from our perspective, the thing like the album in a way is a bit dead, where you used to buy the album and play it all the way through, and it was supposed to be listened to from this track.
But kids are like, my daughters they buy albums, but they're like souvenir type things now. They've got a CD
it's kind of merch.
Yeah.
It's, well, I've just gone back to vinyl.
Yes, okay, yeah.
And I've been at Record Fair this morning.
Oh, yeah.
Again, the cultural thing. So I went to this.
When will cassette tapes come back?
Yeah. I went to the Record Fair this morning, and I was just flicking through, and I found Kings of the Wild Frontier by Adam and the Ants.
Okay.
So I immediately thought, right.
You're not going to come dressed on the. Oh no, it's
with the white stripe. But that was one of the first records that I got. So I must have been about 11 or 12. One of the first records that I thought, well, this is, and I remember playing it over and over again in my room. And that was when I was living in Dublin, in Belgard Heights. And so I immediately took a picture of the cover, Kings of the Wild Frontier cover, and I WhatsApped it. This is modern communication, to my friend who lives in Ireland, who I grew up with.
Wow.
And I was like, remember this? This takes me right back to Belgard in 1981. He was like, oh, yeah. And then I found a Shakin' Stevens, This Old House record. So
did he sing Lipstick, Powder and Paint? Is that Lipstick, Powder and Paint? I'm just going off on one now. I remember
I don't know.
Sort of being obsessed when I was a kid with one. I think that was Shakin' Stevens. I'll ask my mum. Carry on.
Yeah. I just remember This Old House and Green Door. They were two massive hits.
Yeah.
A Welsh guy pretending to be Elvis. It was, and he was incredibly popular.
Fair enough, yeah. But I was just thinking about what you're saying is also sharing, like, what binds friends together. Riz, who a childhood friend of mine, we send each other, that's how I first, Damien Dempsey sent, but just that, I've heard a new piece of music and just knowing that someone's going to love it or potentially loving it and sending it to them and sharing music, I really enjoy that element as well. Of just hearing say, it's a bit like football or whatever, it's a thing that binds you together.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just interesting and that's what I found about that Damien Dempsey gig, like I say, is he got everyone to sing along with so many of his songs, and he always says, let's have a big sing song. And that changes the atmosphere in the room, totally. Everybody, this communal singing. And I think that's a hugely powerful thing. And I only really, again, I'm picking up on these things very late, but that communal power of singing. But then, as you know, my boy Joe started supporting Chelsea, so I've got some Chelsea tickets.
Yeah, I mean,
Chelsea.
I
know. Yeah. But I'm talking about the general football experience.
Yes.
Because I'm just sitting there thinking, right, okay, well, just sit next to him and watch the game. I'm not particularly interested.
Yes.
And then everybody started singing these songs.
Yes.
Thinking, well, this is another example of communal singing, of everybody coming together and feeling tribal. Feeling as one, and you would know much more about that because you obviously go to a lot of games.
Yeah, and Arsenal, we've got more than one song. So I mean that is when you hear the whole stadium just singing.
Yeah.
And it's you can I don't know how to describe it. Or even when the singing and the whole, it's just something magical. Music is magical.
Yeah.
But a chorus of, and one of the guys who comes to the Cornermen, we go for walks, and he knows lots about these kind of historical choirs perpetual choirs he talks about in these areas, which would have been people just gathering and singing in these harmonies just continuously. And I suppose apart from churches and choirs, there's not really a lot in our culture really we do get in football.
Yeah.
And school assembly.
Yes. Remember the old school assembly?
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know, you got communal singing.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing.
Maybe we should just start doing it. Well, you do it, John, don't you? I suppose I might be talking rubbish. There's probably lots of examples
of what?
Where we do all get together and sing.
Yeah. I can be few and far between. I think it was few and far between for me until recently.
Yeah.
But like I say, coming back to that boxing analogy as well, for me, going and performing and singing is just the same as it used to be fighting. When you think about it, practice and prepare, go over and over and over again with these patterns, and then you go out in front of everyone to everyone look at you to try and perform these patterns to the best of your ability. And then, so you get that same nerves, same feeling, and then the same sort of euphoria afterwards when you kind of get away with that because you put yourself out there in a position of, where it could all go disastrously wrong. And if you come away from that and it doesn't, I feel, oh, that's amazing.
Well, it's interesting because, I'm sure we're dipping out, but that links to something I was thinking about with the meaning. I was, Viktor Frankl, who's a massive influence really on some of the work we do, if people were interested in Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. But I was listening to him talk on a YouTube video, and he's talking about, people trying to pursue happiness, or it's often, it's the if you have a goal, trying to achieve that goal or that struggle produces the ability to, happiness is kind of like a part of that, because it's the happiness comes from you trying to achieve your goal rather than I'll be happy when I achieve my goal. And I like the analogy really of when someone, because I'm not a boxer, but I've been surrounded a lot by guys who train. They have a set date in for their boxing match, and they go for it. And some of the Cornermen guys are fighting on the ultra white collar, and you kind of think that having that goal, the goal of I'm going for the fight, I need to be physically fitter, I need to do sparring. And what struck me is that is a great analogy of, when we're trying to get somewhere, we can roll with the punches, we can go through the suffering a bit more. Because who wants to stand in the ring and get punched in the face for no reason? But I've seen guys, they'll go and they'll spar, they'll train really hard, which is painful. They're going, they're pushing themselves, they're watching what they eat, they're making sacrifices. Then they get in the ring and they spar and they get punched regularly in the face, but they can bear it because they know they're working towards something. And I just really like that analogy. It's a bit like us starting the Cornermen. We've got a goal, and there's setbacks, and but we know we can take it because we've got there's a purpose to what we're trying to do. And so Viktor Frankl often talks about finding meaning and purpose in life. And actually, he doesn't just say you've got to find the meaning of life. And someone can correct me if I'm getting this wrong. There's different meanings at different point in your life that you're getting. Life will throw the challenges at you. It's how you respond at those, which is where you find your meaning. So, and that's just when we're working with the Cornermen, a lot of people are, what am I here for? What am I supposed to be doing? What's the meaning of life? And I think it's nice to try and help people try and discover what that meaning is for them at this time.
Well, there's also, that strikes me as well. And we've segued very nicely into meaning now out of music, but we'll probably bring music back in a bit.
Yeah, actually, I just want to share.
It's very professional,
thank you, John.
Yeah. We'll have to flash something up on the bottom of the screen. They have now moved on. But I think it's interesting as well. If you talk to a boxer, and I never really thought about this too much before, but if you'd have talked to me anyway, and like you say, you're going through the sparring, you're going through the training, you're going through the self-denial, you're going through this, and it's like, well, why are you doing that? And it's like, well, because I want to win this fight. And it's like, well, why do you want to win that fight? What's underlying all that sacrifice is the desire to get better. That's all it is. I want to get better. I've got an aim.
Yeah.
My aim is to get better as a boxer. And you might quantify that aim and say, I want to win the next fight, or I want to win this championship, or I want to be champion of this, or I want to come in. You might quantify it in that way, but that's not the end goal. If that you will not stop, you'll carry on. The end goal is just to get better, just to improve, just to move on. And in a way, that gives a meaning to it.
Also, I think it provides some structure.
Yeah.
So some of the people we know will say, I don't do bad habits I'm tended to fall into if I've got that focus, if I've got a meaning, the meaning being the fight. So, I won't use drugs, or I won't drink, and they can do it for that period while there's a kind of goal and a meaning to what they're doing. So I think just the analogy works really nicely, because we see people that are going through hell. and there's no other way around that. And there's no, you can't sugarcoat it for people. And sometimes you can't lie and say, oh, it's not a Disney movie. You can't say, oh, in the end it's going to be all right. Sometimes it isn't, and you can only sort of try and, as someone going through something now, and we just have to say, right, each week's around. And he likes the analogy.
So in a way, I mean, just trying to paraphrase what you were saying about Viktor Frankl, because you were saying about the happiness. So meaning gives you happiness, but that's almost like a byproduct.
A byproduct.
The most important thing is that meaning will enable you to transcend the suffering.
Yes.
To cope with the suffering, to deal with the suffering, however you want to put it. Because that and that suffering, that is inevitably going to come.
Yes.
Because that's just how life is.
Yeah.
It's that meaning that helps us cope.
Yeah. And I wonder, we talk a lot of, I don't want to go too much in, but we're told, anxiety and is almost all these negative feelings or sadness are kind of seen as something that we need to push away, and be dealt with. You shouldn't be having them. And I was talking with, Wyan, who's, I have to have clinical supervision as part of my doing what I do.
And Wyan is
he's a he's a psychotherapist. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's the person I talk to once a month. And so, but I was just telling him about something so personal, and he said, "How do you feel about that?" And I said, "Well, it's just sad." And he said, "Yeah, it's just sad, and that's it. There's no." You can't sometimes make it better. I just have to say that is sad, and that's what's come along in that moment. That's what's happened. You just have to kind of take that and recognise. And we talk about anger as well as that kind of being. It's a normal feeling. You can't switch it off. If you do, it becomes worse.
But I think as long as these feelings of anger or sadness are transitory, and if you recognise they're transitory,
they're going to pass.
Yeah. Then I think you're in a good place.
Yeah.
Not the sense that the sadness is a good place or anger is a good place, but if you recognise they're transitory, you recognise there's a cause.
Yeah.
Maybe you can do something about that cause, or maybe you just have to let it go.
Yeah.
Then that's a healthy place to be. If you feel you're in that angry state or that sad state all the time, then that is where the kind of problems arise.
So I suppose what we're saying with meaning, if you've got a meaning, you want to do something, or this is what I want to achieve. If you get anxious, but I'm going to get I had to talk in front of some suicide prevention experts, and you kind of get imposter syndrome. I don't. But sort of I know that I have to speak to these people because ultimately they need to know what we're doing, and ultimately if we're not doing it right, then someone needs to tell us. And but also they want to hear what's going on, and so by doing that, by overcoming it and talking, it is a further down of where we want to be going, which is to let people know what we're doing. And you get over the anxiety and you can talk, and then they can say, they were very happy with what's going on with the Cornermen. But I think what I'm trying to sort of say is it what's that Nietzsche quote I was talking about before? He who has a why can bear with any how.
Bear almost any how.
Yeah. So so that's what meaning and purpose can give us, But it's personal and individual. I don't want to sit here and say you need to find the meaning of life. Good luck with that.
Yeah, and I think it's very true that people people struggle to find a lot of meaning in what they do or in their lives. And I think if you pull that meaning out from people, it really, you don't realise how much it knocks you for six, because you're still going around thinking, well, I should be happy because I've got a car and I've got this and I've got whatever, and materially or health-wise you're okay. But then you can you can almost go and destroy yourself because you don't have that meaning inside of you. And I think there's a lot of,
Well, just within that, our kind of culture tells us that your meaning should be to find the car, the house, the financial. With that, for us now,
and you should, to find out if you're getting that meaning, you should compare yourself to.
Hey,
the sofa.
The sofa. That can go in the outtake. Just carry on.
I think we'll just carry on.
Find the meaning in the suffering, John.
Transcend the sofa.
Yeah, I'm so glad I'm now even shorter than you. Can you hear me all right, Mark? Mark?
If people ever do listen to this, maybe this could be known as the sofa episode.
I need a stall, though.
to make it look like you meant to do that. That's what you do. Put a sword pop
I
out.
flip out.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yes. Where were we? What was I saying?
Meaning, and people saying that they're supposed to find their meaning in like material possessions of what our society recommends they find meaning in, and if they don't find meaning in that, then maybe there's something wrong with it. You could medicalise that. You could say, well, you're depressed, take a pill.
Yeah, or that people feel that they have not achieved, they're a failure.
Yeah.
And I think that is we spoke about a bit of faith, but that is where we've lost a bit of spirituality really in what we do, and so material possessions are great. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to have more money, but I think that people feel, my worry is people feel, oh, I haven't got this, so therefore my life hasn't, I'm failing. When actually, try being, there's many places you can find meaning and many ways to kind of get a.
Well, as a more religious society, I suppose we did have that meaning.
Yeah.
And that was supposed to bring us meaning. I know for some people it wouldn't have done, and but I mean, it's like, and I think if meaning is dealing with suffering, then if you look at the Christian story, if you look at the story of Christ, I mean, that is really the ultimate idea of finding meaning in suffering and transcending suffering to find meaning and accepting suffering to transcend it.
Yeah.
Because if you look at that, I mean, like Jung would say that's an archetypical story because it's like, it's a fundamental, and you've got to think about that story because we've been looking at it for 2,000 years and we still can't work it out. And we're still, but it's so archetypical because it's so extreme. So first of all, you're betrayed by your best friend. Then you're betrayed by your community. Then you're young. Then you're going to die horribly. And then you're innocent. And everybody knows you're innocent. And even then, just to compound that, your community is asked, do you want to free this person we know is guilty? Or free you who we know is innocent?
Yeah.
And they say, no, we'll free the guilty person.
Yeah.
Then you've got to suffer a horrific, painful death, of which I don't think there's any more painful death. You've got to do that in public. You've got to know it's coming. And you're young, and all you've ever done is help people. So how does it get any worse than that? And it's like when you look at that story and all the constituent parts of that story, of the mob, of the, of the death, of the, of the tragedy, of the family, of the betrayal, of all that stuff. And then you look at all that, and at the end of that story, you come to the light.
Yeah.
Because you come to the resurrection, and you come to the transcending of that suffering, almost through acceptance. And you come to almost making something bigger than that suffering, to transcend that suffering and make something that was worthwhile. It was I hesitate to say this because I've never been crucified, but it was worthwhile going through that to come at the other end and show that suffering could be managed, could be understood, and could be transcended without bitterness. Because there's obviously that classic line that he says, forgive them for they don't know what they do.
And it's such a shame that in a way, religion and that is mocked. It's seen as a very, it's this kind, I don't know what the right word for it is, but, because it couldn't be scientifically backed up. It's almost written off, and you could take it for any, the Buddha sort of was suffering that inspired, he's in the palace. It's when he escapes and sees that there are people do age, that it's the suffering that spurs, but even the great myths, that all these old stories, that talk about what life is like, the suffering.
Well, yeah, exactly. Look at the Greek. It's always the trial. The hero can't just be a hero. He can't just turn up and be a hero. He has to have a trial where he looks like it's all going to go wrong. And if you take that, then you're going to look at our superhero movies. They're like Greek myths. It's like the hero comes along, then it all goes wrong. He goes through a terrible trial, but through being truthful and being, and sticking to his ideals and sticking to his principles, and being willing to almost lay down everything, his suffering transcends the ordeal, and he comes out, with more meaning.
Someone who's really good at it is Joseph Campbell. If people haven't read about Joseph, he kind of inspired George Lucas. Joseph Campbell talks about the kind of hero arc.
Yeah.
This kind of, and there's a thread that goes through all myths, all it's a kind of, I don't know what the word is, but like a story that talks absolute truth. It's really interesting if you get a chance, Joseph Campbell, to hear some of his thoughts on kind of the hero and the myth and how it plays out in that hero arc. Especially Star Wars, which is a film I grew up.
I have to look that up. Yeah, I love Star Wars as well.
the hero arc, redemption, and so it's great stuff.
Yeah. But it's those stories and understanding the meaning of those stories.
Yeah.
I think we kind of lack.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's that in part the meaning of those stories is that suffering is a constituent part of life, and often suffering is necessary for growth. Whereas we often seem to think that we shouldn't be suffering at all. If we are suffering at all, it's bad.
Yeah.
And like I say, often you maybe need to medicalize that. You need to stop it. You need to turn away from whatever it is that is maybe tormenting you or you're finding difficult. And and instead of confronting it. And I think
suffering is bad. You can't get away from it. Don't want to. No,
but maybe suffering
is not the only way to find
necessary
meaning, but it does help you in those times. And Viktor Frankl, when he wrote *Man's Search for Meaning*, it's a bit like the story, not story of Christ, but that you can't. He was in Auschwitz.
Yes, yeah.
So his theory got tested. So it's not what I like about it isn't just that he sort of, this will be good for other people. It was like, I was in Auschwitz. Finding meaning in what I was doing is the only way that's got me through.
Yeah. Because you think that would lead to the ultimate nihilism.
Exactly.
The ultimate losing faith in humanity.
And I'm sure it did to some. And how could it not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you completely lose that meaning and become completely nihilistic in that sort of environment, then the only thing left is death, really.
Well, it just makes everything so much worse.
Yeah.
Even like I used to Lily, my youngest, used to hate cleaning her room, as we all do when we're kids. But I had to say to her, by you just dragging it out for hours, kicking off about it, doing it, makes the worst job worse.
Yeah.
You might as well think, I've got to do this. There's no getting out of it. Get it done. Do it the best you can. Get it out of the way, and then don't make the worst job you're doing worse by making because it doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
I've just told you to tidy your room. So
we all go through that.
Yeah, I said you can stomp about. The only person that is going to be affected by this sulk is yourself.
Yeah.
So just tidy your room. It's got to be done. So and hopefully that helps because she now cleans up horses every morning at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
But we can make things 10 times worse by our attitude, just sort of, and it only affects ourselves. It's like bitterness and hanging on, and you do more damage to yourself.
Yeah.
Segueing off into other bits, but we can cover those. What else can we cover in meaning, John? Has it been quite clear?
I think
my demonstration of still finding meaning while this tragedy of this chair collapsing.
Yeah. Well, you just coped with it.
Well, what I don't like is...
And you kind of actually made something out of it.
Thank you.
Well, I suppose everybody recognises the importance of meaning. The question is how you find that meaning. And I think a lot of the thing, I think you can find meaning ultimately in serving other people.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if serving is the right word that I'm trying to use, but it has to be related to other people. I mean, it's this. If we want to try that thought experiment of like, there's no one else around, and you're all of a sudden the richest person in the world, or you're the most beautiful person in the world. All these things are meaningless if there's no other people around you.
Yeah, okay.
So, to validate that.
Yes.
So we all validate ourselves because we're totally so
Is this where you're going to slip in that someone said you look like Tom Hardy?
No, but that did happen. Hold on. I've got that recorded and witnessed.
It's meaningless to look this good thing if there's no one around to tell me about it.
I didn't even see that link, but there
we are. Yeah, I was on the lookout for it.
Must have been subconsciously putting it in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we need that validation of other people, and I think really, a lot of the time we find that meaning, and obviously a great example of that.
Yeah.
In that meaning and service to other people, as because we run the Cornermen, the Cornermen are generally people who are going through a hard time.
Yeah.
And are often struggling to find any sort of meaning in life.
Yeah.
And anything worth carrying on for, worth doing, worth, what's the point is a thing I think that comes up a lot. And as you know, we do the toy bank. And so we put out toy boxes, in lots of businesses and stuff locally. And we collect about 5,000 toys a year and we distribute them to underprivileged children around Oxfordshire. And in the last couple of years, when the Cornermen's been running, when we've asked people, so we need help to distribute these toys. We have so much generosity from people, which is amazing. But we need help to distribute these toys. And you think, how am I going to do this? Because you can't physically, it's impossible with all the requests that we get now. Although, we do distribute through Oxfordshire Social Services, which is kind of easy to just deliver to them.
Yeah.
We get lots of direct requests. And it's like, how are we going to do this? And you think, well, the last people you want to ask is people who are maybe a bit depressed and maybe not having a great time. Yeah. And on a lot of levels, they've got a lot to cope with. And then you're going to ask them to do something else. But we found the absolute reverse of that, didn't we? We found that everybody in the Cornermen, using the Cornermen service, when we said on a group chat, would anybody like to help with these deliveries? People just leapt at the chance. Yeah, yeah. And I just, remember these guys driving round and round in sort of mid-December.
Yeah.
Shooting around Oxford, climbing up tower blocks, dumping off bags. It wasn't an easy job.
Oh, great.
And, doing it because it gave some meaning. So you think these are people that, and also coupled with that, and I suppose I'm just validating my point, that meaning can be found in service to other people, because we found that lots of people found meaning through doing that. And also within the Cornermen, the importance of asking someone to look out for someone else.
Yeah.
When they're maybe not looking after themselves so well, but, you say, listen, can you please, this is a new guy, could you pick him up? Could you bring him in? Could you talk to him? Could you look out? Could you give him a knock?
Yeah.
Just check his out, check in on him. That sort of thing gives that person a meaning.
Yeah. Well, it's a concept borrowed from where I was before as well, Emmaus, which was a homeless service. And one of their lines was, we, first served those who suffer the most, but we called it solidarity, where we would, people who had just come from the street would do acts, fix neighbours' fences, take... feed, we'd have a drop in, they still do, with street homeless, they'd feed that, and even took aid over to the Calais camp at the time. So lots, and that really, of all the people that's what they said, really kind of, you can have all the great work in and support work we want, but being able to do something, the pride and the meaning in it was something that they found really, really valuable. And and I think it's people. The meaning has to be to the individual. If someone goes to a service and says, "I need to find meaning," it's different for each individual at different, and what the stage of life they're going through. Meaning changes at different times of your life. So it's a question. It's the answer. And that's why when people come along, I think it's very nice that they say thank you to the Cornermen. That's great, but actually they've done the work, because the challenge is, what these is your struggle. How are you going to get yourself out of it? And let's talk about it. And they have to answer the question themselves. And when they do, it's great to see, as we've seen, John running a half marathon this week, and got 2 lads on the ultra white collar, and guys going on to do. So it's amazing. But they've done it. They've answered the questions. And I think we just try and help people ask the right questions, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think coming back to something just to link back into music again, but I think another part of meaning that's very important is communication.
Yes.
To be able to communicate with other people, and to feel that they, and like I said to you about sitting in your bedroom and maybe feeling not on your own.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden hearing this song and realising I'm not on my own. Lots of people think like this and feel like this. And that kind of, it ties in really with the communication.
Yeah.
And the meaning that you get from music. And the communication and the meaning that you get from helping other people. So it's all like intense forms of communication.
Community, I'd add to that as well.
Yeah.
The meaning to be part of a community, and I think we all want that as well. So, yeah. Any other thoughts, John?
No, I think let's wrap it up there.
Yeah.
So I think, in summary, we would say music is magical.
Yeah.
And help other people and communicate with them.
Yeah.
There you go.
And make sure that your sofa's legs are all right for you.
Yeah. But you might have to transcend that.
I'm gonna have to.
If you
my ego.
If you've got yourself integrated and sorted, you'll be able to cope with that.
Thanks, John.
There you go. You cope with it very well.
Thank you, John.
Have a tantrum now when the cameras go off. Fucking leg.
Yeah. Great.
Cool. We'll be back next month. Thank you very much.